Hi Kiwi, alright, we are back at another episode of Pokemon Shining Pearl, and today we are going to be crossing the waters and heading to our next destination. Taking on some fishermen in the meantime, I imagine?
Outdoor fishing for the win. Shouting doesn't help my fishing any, but shout I must.
I know some people like that. Doesn't matter what their natural speaking volume is, it's always louder than I would prefer it to be. Anywho, so today what we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about? Oh, a fisherman with not a Gyarados for a change, that's exciting. I just talk about some of my favorite Pokemon through competitive and like just casual playthrough history. I know I've done that a little bit when I was reviewing the gens, but I've never really like gone into my history as a competitive Pokemon player from back in the day. Also, probably should not be leading with Celestabetha through this route if I'm going to be surfing. There are going to be a lot of not so friendly water types, I imagine. We'll switch out to Pine Tree. We'll save Captain Squawk for later, just because he's starting to get a little bit over-leveled and I don't want him to potentially eat some of our lower-level Pokemon later on. Again, house rules, if a Pokemon reaches a greater than 5 levels above my lowest level Pokemon and is used in battle, it eats that Pokemon and they're basically dead, like in a typical Nuzlocke rule where a Pokemon would faint. Anyway, so my competitive history really didn't start until Gen 4, and that's part of the reason why I hold Gens 4 so close to my heart. I just have a lot of strong connections to the Pokemon I use in my team, as well as the friends I made playing with those teams, I suppose. So early on, my team, I based my team off of, if you're not familiar with it, there's a website called Maryland, run by a person who goes by the name of Maryland. It was basically just a Pokemon walkthrough site, had a ton of guides, a lot of numbers as well that were relevant to just like helping plan what team you want, which Pokemon would be competitively viable, and just giving you a pretty solid guide through the entire game as well. Like every generation there was a solid guide. It was a very like good one-stop, here's references for all the information I could possibly want when trying to prepare my team. And my original team was based on, oh no, this has Ice Fang. Okay, we're fine. But we are switching out. That is not something we want to stick with. I guess I can use U-turn. It'll do a little chip damage and we should be faster. Anyway, so Maryland's team back then was, of course, classic defensive course, Skarmory and Blissey. Skarmory for physical defense and Blissey for special defense. Guess we have to use Captain Squawk. I should probably stop at a Poké Center and restore some power points for some of my other Pokemon so I can use them. Like, we cannot use Starstar Gecko because Starstar Gecko has like no attacking moves left in its entire move pool. Anyway, so of course I had the classic Skarm Bliss defensive core. You'd switch between the two to tank hits from the relevant attack type. They also had very good kind of setup moves, so I had Stealth Rock on Blissey. So back in Gen 4 when Stealth Rock was first introduced, it was a behemoth of a move that kind of invalidated a lot of Pokemon and a lot of previously existing strategies. Focus Sash was always a valuable tool. Focus Sash was an item, a held item, that if a Pokemon held and got hit from full HP to 0, it would always survive with 1 HP and consume the item. And Stealth Rock, and pretty much any entry hazard always invalidated that strategy, because when you switch in, those entry hazards, as they are appropriately named, will cause damage to the Pokemon switching in, barring certain abilities.
Wow, this is hurting.
Namely, Stealth Rock, really there wasn't anything that could resist it directly.
Yeah, nothing's biting.
There may have been some abilities back then, but I think they were very few and far between. Abilities like Magic Bounce are now a little bit more available, and Magic Bounce, namely, is the one that kind of like reflects entry hazard moves and other like non-attacking moves back at the user. The issue is it was linked to some very specific Pokemon, for example, Dreamworld Espeon. Dreamworld Pokemon were just Pokemon that were acquired through a very specific means. Uh-oh. I think the Joy-Cons have gone rogue. 1 second. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Okay, I haven't even interacted with them, but they turn on automatically when I boot up the Switch, when it gets plugged in into the computer. It's very annoying. Anyway, so I've gone on like 3 different tangents. Let's see, Pine Tree should be able to handle a couple fish. I'll heal them up in battle just to play it safe. Anyway, where was I with this? So yeah. So Magic Bounce, Dream World Pokemon were a special kind of Pokemon. You caught them through this area called the Dream World, and the Dream World Pokemon would typically have these secondary abilities that you don't typically find in the wild, and some of them were huge deals, some of them were whatever, but largely they were effectively a way to spice up competitive, because I've already talked in previous parts of this series that Pokemon abilities, when they were introduced in Generation 3, were a huge godsend and kind of a shaking of the status quo starting in Gen 3. And Dream World abilities basically gave pre-established Pokemon, whose abilities were presumably set in stone, access to potentially one or more new abilities, typically only one. Espeon, as I was saying, got an ability called Magic Bounce, which reflects non-damaging moves back at the opponent, which was very good for dealing with those inevitable pains in the arse that were Stealth Rock and Spikes and Toxic Spikes, which all can be stacked at the same time, so you can take ground damage, rock damage, and be poisoned on entry, and all of those added up to a lot. So it basically, ever since Gen 4 was introduced, and even before then, the move Rapid Spin was very necessary to competitive Pokemon. Rapid Spin was a move that clears those entry hazards, but it's only learned by a select number of Pokemon, and it's a normal type move, which meant gave all the more reason for ghost types to be imperative to a competitive team in a lot of instances. We call them spin blockers, basically because ghost type Pokemon can't be hit by normal type moves. If you know your opponent is switching out to a Pokemon that can use Rapid Spin, you switch to your Ghost type and block that move, and they don't clear your entry hazards. And then presumably your Ghost type has something to threaten who's ever using that Rapid Spin move. They've made it now so that a lot of new Pokemon can still have access, or there are several new moves that can do that. Defog is probably the biggest one, as we've already established in this game. It didn't used to do that, but they changed it, I believe. It used to be that Defog just cleared stat changes, I believe, but now it also clears entry hazards for whatever reason. Not going to complain, I guess it makes sense. You're doing a giant gust to blow away fog, you may as well blow away the entry hazards too, if we're talking about like the logical progression of how that works. And you know what, I don't care. I think there should be more moves that clear out entry hazards in this game, frankly. They're an abject nightmare to deal with, and I feel like they were very limiting to how you had to play competitively, particularly Stealth Rock. Like, I was willing to forgive Spikes because flying type Pokemon don't get affected by them, and Pokemon with Levitate aren't affected by them. They're still a bright pain, but they're manageable. They have some counterplay that you don't have to like actively waste a turn or a move to deal with. Granted, it doesn't get rid of them for the rest of your team, so it's still there. It's still a problem. But I digress. I personally do not like entry hazards, but of course, if you're playing competitive, you're going to have to use them, or you're going to have to suffer the consequences, because they are just such a valuable tool. So, kind of the long tangent was, Blissey had Stealth Rock. It also ran Soft Boil to heal, Seismic Toss to deal reasonable damage. Blissey does not have very good attacking stats. It's really meant to just be a wall to tank hits and force your opponent to switch out while you kind of stall them out a little bit and set up entry hazards. Blissey also had Thunder Wave, which was very valuable, because then what I could do is, if my opponent was committed to not switching out, I could Thunder Wave them, paralyze them, which would either halve or quarter their speed depending on the generation we're talking about, and give them a 25% chance of just not being able to move all the way entirely because of full paralysis activating. Okay, he's got nothing to say, but that was Blissey. And then Skarmory, I believe I know for a fact it has Spikes on it, so I could do both Stealth Rock from Blissey and Spikes from Skarmory. Oh, this was a pretty short route, wasn't it? Probably a bunch of trainers here.
What? So my girlfriend is on the other side? You saved me, thanks. Please take these.
You obtained 3 Flora stickers F. Cool, I guess. Don't know how characters who don't have Surf Access are going to get across that way, but no matter. You look like a trainer we're going to battle. I'm going to learn my lesson and move Celeste Bether from the first party position, and we'll just leave. You know what? We'll just leave with Captain Squawk. He's only 3 levels above everyone else. We'll catch him the rest up soon enough.
A man of the sea is also a man of Pokemon.
You say so, my friend. Anyway, so Skarmory had definitely had Spikes, had Roost for healing, I want to say it had Drill Peck and maybe Whirlwind, but I don't think I used Whirlwind on it, but I can't remember what my 4th move was otherwise. But as you can see, these Pokemon don't have a lot in the way of offensive moves. They're for setting up entry hazards against my opponent and then kind of forcing them to switch because their alternative options aren't doing much in the way of damage to me. And my competitive strategy was always to have 2 offensive core, 2 defensive core, and then 2 that I would kind of have as switches. So the 4 main staples of my team were always Blissey, Skarmory, Gengar, and Salamence, and or Scrafty. Scrafty I would switch out for Salamence because my friend group had a house rule of no base 600 and above Pokemon. Base 600 and above kind of refers to what we call pseudo-legendaries, so Pokemon like Dragonite, Salamence, most legendaries have above 600. Basically, we're referring to their base stats. If the total sum of their base stats is greater than 600, and we're not talking about like the in-game numbers, we're talking about the numbers that those numbers are scaled off of. So, for example, when a Pokemon on my team levels up, you see, okay, its HP is 107 or whatever, and its attack is 56. Those are based on a number, like a smaller number that scales. Basically, so here, probably the simplest example is I know off the top of my head. So Blissey, I believe max HP was 704, and that was based on a base HP of somewhere in the hundreds. So it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. It is a linear multiple though. So I just don't remember it off the top of my head.
Inca's away.
Because I haven't really thought about competitive Pokemon in a long while. Or, well, okay, I haven't indulged in competitive Pokemon. I've definitely thought about it. I'm thinking about it right now, clearly. I haven't been involved with it. This guy looks like he's going to be an electric guitar, so I'm going to assume he leads with either poison or electric or steel type. And we haven't used Quipple Core in a while.
Let it rock. It's the rhythm of battle.
And anyway, so Gengar has always been my favorite Pokemon since Gen 1. I loved the Ghost types, and Ghost types are still among my favorite types of Pokemon all around. I think they're not only just, it's my aesthetic, I guess. I'm like this weird closet goth, maybe. I guess is how I'm going to interpret that, but more so, I just think they're fun. They often can fly. They were always interesting in the anime. They were kind of like the prankstery, tricky Pokemon. I loved, one of my favorite episodes of the anime that I still remember was the episode where, quote unquote, Ash dies. Not really, but he goes like flying through the night sky with a group of Haunter, Ghastly, and Gengar. And it was, I don't know, it was like, I always dreamed of having that happen to me one day. Obviously not dying, like coming back and...
Can you hear it? That's my guitar weeping.
But it is, I don't know, it was always like so cool to me as a kid to see that episode. Just stood out to me so much. And so the Gengar, I have a very fond memory with Gengar because I actually won a competitive tournament with him. So let me make this clear, I've only played single battles tournaments. I have never done VGC format, which I honestly think is objectively the best format for competitive Pokemon. It's just so much more interesting and it's a lot faster, which I think is important because single battle competitive Pokemon can be a slog sometimes, especially if you're fighting against stall teams. Like, I'm sure there are, I imagine it is very much harder to pull off stall when playing. Oh, we've got a scientist, yeah? Let's see.
Jeff, long time no see. Oh, you look puzzled. You're wondering who I am? I'm Professor Rowan's assistant and
Dawn's father. I actually had a guess that was who this guy was, but a shame they made Dawn's dad so base model uninteresting looking.
The professor asked that I upgrade your Pokedex, you see, so I'd chosen this spot on a hunch you'd pass through. Jeff, may I have your Pokedex for a moment? Let's see, what was I supposed to put in the software here? Ka-chunk.
I'd like to imagine that he just said that out loud and it wasn't a sound effect.
It looks like your Pokedex doesn't need upgrading. It already lets you toggle between images of male and female Pokemon. Technology sure has improved lately. Okay, I'll leave you to carry on with your project for the professor. May I also ask you to keep an eye on Team Galactic? The professor is concerned about what happened in Jubilife City. It's probably nothing to worry over. I'll be on my way now.
Cool, you were completely irrelevant and good luck getting anywhere if you don't have a way to surf over that water, my friend.
Gee, I sure am thirsty.
The classic security guard in Pokemon, they always want vending machine drinks. I don't know if I have any. Oh, this is Canalov. I'm gonna call this Canalave City, just because of the E at the end. This is another song that I have fallen asleep to a number of times. But it looks like I'm gonna have to take a tangent off of my competitive Pokemon memories because we've got a lot of dialogue in a new town, so here we go. Wish my throat good luck. It's been a couple days since the last recording, so I've definitely recovered, but
I hear that there is a man who is very forgetful here in Canalave City. He even makes Pokemon forget their moves.
oh, okay. That's potentially the move deleter is very valuable because there are moves that you just don't want. And back in the day when HMs were a permanent fixture on a Pokemon, it was the only way to get them off of a Pokemon, and in Gen 1 there was no way to remove them, if I recall.
Hello, trainer. Here are some things I found. They were mixed in a load of cargo from another country. I can't use them, so I think you should take them.
Why, thank you for just shoving your junk onto me, but I'm not gonna complain. TMs are useful.
You know how Pokemon have their own abilities? Well, the move Skill Swap exchanges the user's ability with that of its target Pokemon. How you use Skill Swap is a measure of your expertise as a trainer.
You know, Skill Swap I feel like was brought into the game just for the sake of Regigigas and slacking to make them relevant.
Somewhere beyond the sea, there are other lands populated by Pokemon and trainers.
I was expecting that to be more of a song. It felt like a song, like a Frank Sinatra maybe? Whatever.
What's up? Your clothes look damp. Were you swimming at the beach right by Sanjum Town?
I love how soothing some of the music in Pokemon can be.
A Pokeball a Pokeball that makes it easy to catch the same kinds of Pokemon? Well, that's a repeat ball.
Something tells me we need one of those for all the Geodudes we're running into, frankly.
I wonder what I should buy for an outing to Iron Island.
All right, anything new in the Pokemarts that we would want? It doesn't hurt to take a couple repeat balls. I was making a joke of it, but we've got the funds to spend. Let's go ahead and take that. Timer ball, probably not going to use those nearly as much, but we'll take them. Like I said, I'm not hurting for cash right now. Well, maybe a little bit too little hurting for cash. We've been making good use of Quick Ball, so I'll buy 13 and just top us off. I mean, at this point, I don't think I'm going to have any use for them by the time I actually need to. Let's get another 10 Ultra Balls. All right, there we go. We've cut our coin down by at least half now. And let's stock up on some Hyper Potions, because our Pokemon are starting to get tanky enough where this is relevant. I don't think we need any status cures, but I think I'm just going to ignore potions now, and 10 Super Potions should be plenty. I don't think we need regular potions anymore. All right, there we go. Nothing like a nice little resource regathering. All right, let's see, another house. Just kind of want to sit and listen to the music, but I don't think anyone else wants me to do that right now.
Who did you say I was again? Oh yes, I remember. I remember now. I'm the move deleter. You've come to make me force your Pokemon to forget some moves.
No, I'm not interested right now.
Remember me if there are moves that need to be forgotten.
Okay, bye. Yeah, I do not. I very much appreciate that they've made HMs a separate entity altogether. The move Pokemon or whatever. Welcome to Canalave City, the Canal City. In the old days, this port used to be a hub for cargo. I'm not reading well. I'm pretty tired, honestly. In the old days, this port used to be a hub for cargo transportation. Another Psyduck. You've got to say?
My Psyduck is very smart. It can use the move Future Sight.
Great. You know, Future Sight was a really fun move for me back as a kid. It's not necessarily the best, although I do believe its base damage is pretty solid, actually. It's just the fact that you have to wait 2 turns for the damage to get off just makes it sort of unreliable, because you could probably, in the time it takes to use that move, just hit a Pokemon with Psychic twice.
The same kinds of Pokemon can sometimes have different abilities. Maybe you have to raise 2 with different abilities. I can't use the hidden move Strength from my Pokédex until I beat the gym leader Byron.
Byron. Oh, right. Okay. If I recall, Byron is, what's his name? Not Rourke. Or is it Rourke? It might be Rourke. Yeah, I think it's Rourke. So the first gym leader, the Rock-type gym leader, I'm pretty sure Byron is his dad. And so we're going from Rock-type gym leader to Steel-type gym leader, which would be great for Celeste Betha because Fire types are super effective against Steel types, until you account for the fact that Steel types often have Ground or Rock-type moves that would be super effective against Celeste Betha.
Whoops! Oh, hey Jeff! You're going to challenge the gym leader up ahead, eh? Someone should check to see if you're ready for this challenge. And that someone is me with my brand new gym badge.
This is a little bit of a problem because we don't have a lot of PP on the Pokemon that might be relevant to taking him out. He's probably got higher level Pokemon, and he's got 5 of them. So this, oh, congratulations, you finally evolved your Starly. It's still not a Staraptor, but I got bad news. I forgot that I was leading with Quipplecore, so he's gonna have a bad time. Even with Intimidate, I think our damage is solid. And now this gives me a chance to talk more about competitive Pokemon, so here we go. So Gengar, like I was going to talk about, Gengar I actually won a competitive match with. The way what happened, okay, well I now know that Staravia has 82 HP, but why? Anyway, so what happened was, this was what my setup for Gengar was. Of course, Gengar back then had Levitate as its ability, which made it fairly good against dealing with ground types because it could not get hit by them, and meant he wouldn't take damage from spikes either. So I could use him to switch in to deal with any sort of like earthquake predictions or that sort of thing. I don't think I want to stay in against a grass type. Let's switch out to Celestabetha. She can definitely handle Roselia. And so my moveset for Gengar was Shadow Ball and Sludge Bomb as my core damaging moves. I then had Substitute. And frankly, I remember what my fourth move on Gengar was. I think it was probably an offensive move, but I can't actually remember what it was. But most importantly, those were the 3 moves that mattered. Substitute, Shadow Ball, and Sludge Bomb. So those 2 attacking moves benefit from the same type attack bonus that Gengar gets because it's a dual type. It'll be a 25% boost to both of those moves, but they have pretty solid base damage, base 90 for both, I believe, 100% accuracy, and Shadow Ball can drop an opponent's special defense. Sludge Bomb can inflict heavy poison or badly poison an enemy, meaning it does damage like Toxic, where the damage ramps up over time. And that'll be very relevant in a moment, but let me explain why I had Substitute on Gengar. So Gengar was holding an item called, I think it was a Salac Berry, forgive me if I'm misremembering that, because there were 2 that I always used, either one that boosted a Pokemon's speed or one that boosted a Pokemon's damage. And the trigger condition for that was my Pokemon got below a third of its HP, or maybe a quarter of its HP. Let's see, to deal with Buizel, we send out the Shocky Boy. Yeah, send out Captain Squawk. So that's why I had Substitute. The way Substitute works is it removes a quarter of your HP. Now, this is a fun little niche Pokemon thing. If you had an uneven number of Pokemon, like an odd number of HP on a Pokemon, moves like Stealth Rock and Substitute that do either half, a quarter, some multiple of 25%, let's say. If you had an odd number of HP and had the correct odd number HP, because it doesn't always work out exactly the way you want it to, you would always survive with 1 HP, even though a move should do a quarter of your HP, and you used it 4 times, you would still survive with 1 HP. And that was very valuable to know, like, the exact amount of HP you would want a Pokemon in competitive to have to deal with Spike, Stealth Rock, that sort of thing. And I had that set up for Gengar, but most importantly, Substitute, like I said, it cuts your HP by a quarter each time. And what that meant for Gengar is I could spam Substitute because Gengar is an inherently fast Pokemon, so it tends to go first. So you use Substitute, and even if your opponent's going to hit you with a move that would normally take you out, the way Substitute works is it absorbs it absorbs a hit, basically, instead of your Pokemon. Yeah, you cut your HP by a quarter, but that guarantees that's the most damage you're taking that turn under a number of circumstances. It's not perfect, mind you, but it is effectively how it works. And so it would block an opponent's attack and cut Gengar's HP, but in a controlled manner. And I would keep using Substitute until let's use Aerial Ace here. It should be quite effective, and Heracross is already half dead. This should be fine. Because my opponent had 2 options: either do something other than attack Gengar and knock the Substitute out, in which case Gengar can start dealing damage and have a free turn where it can't get hurt. Or you knock out the Substitute and let me kind of keep repeating it, getting my HP lower and lower until the point where you can't use Substitute, because if you don't have the HP to make the Substitute, you can't use Substitute. But the point was, 1 second.
We've gotten out of tighter spots than this plenty of times before.
The point is that by doing this, I have now set myself up to have my berry activated. My berry, again, has the ability to raise special attack by 50%. So a Gengar that is already very fast and already deals a lot of damage now deals even more damage. Plus or minus still has a substitute up. And because I managed to get that Salac Berry activated, and over the course of the whole battle, Gengar was my last Pokemon. My opponent still had like 4 or 5 Pokemon left, but they had all taken damage. They had been switched out, like I would switch out to like kind of defensively deal with an opponent's moves. What just happened? You're telling me I lost? And because of that, Gengar, being enhanced and fast, was able to sweep the entire remainder of my opponent's party. Yeah, you're better. You're a bit better than me as usual, but listen up. Let me tell you who's gonna take on the Pokemon League and become the champion. You guessed it, that's right, it's going to be you. That's not what he said, but we all know how this is ending for Betty. You guessed right, it's going to be me. Anyways, you should be able to take on the gym leader here. Now hurry up and get to it. Maybe it's about time we finally use a Poké Center. We have at least 3 charges. We've gotten a bunch from the gym leaders and the Betty fights that we've had and the squad leaders. Yeah, well, let's go ahead and make some of our Pokemon usable again, because I don't like sitting on Captain Squawk and Pine Tree as like our only usable Pokemon when they're already kind of at the upper height of where I have to limit them being usable. Anyway, so my Gengar ended up sweeping an entire team of like 4 or 5 Pokemon. There was a Gliscor, a Blissey, I believe a Salamence, and oh gosh, I can't remember what. The Blissey was a challenge, but what I did was I spammed Sludge Bomb and waited for it to get hit by the Toxic effect. And because of Toxic and the Salac Berry and Gengar's base damage, I actually was able to out damage and out heal Blissey spamming Soft Boiled. Soft Boiled heals a Pokemon for 50% of its HP.
Hello, this is the Canalave Library. Please keep quiet while you're on the premises.
I am not going to read all these books, but I remember quite liking this place because it actually gives you a bunch of like little hints and like lore drops from the books.
What is it? Please don't disturb me when I'm reading.
But I'm not going to spam through all the dialogue of the books here. They're cool, but I guess I just don't have the interest in doing so. The books on the 3rd floor are easy to read. The ones down here are all too tough for me to understand. But they like talk about they allude to Arceus, they allude to Palkia and Dialga, and they talk about the spirit Pokemon as well. Someone's always checked out the book I want to read. I know that feeling. I'm sure Kiwi, you have likely felt that feeling too in the past. Every book contains someone's memories of various places and times. Libraries aren't just buildings where books are kept, you know. They're where different places and times are gathered together. Alright, that's cool. There may be a like plot line that makes us have to come back here anyway, but I'll wait until I get that plot line before I go hunting for books. But I know Kiwi quite values libraries and bookstores especially. Oh my goodness, Kiwi can get lost in a bookstore. It's really cute. It's very fun. I'm not as into it, but like I'm happy to bring her to one and watch her just be so happy to explore one.
I'm going to study at the library. Aren't books just lovely? I love how reading takes me to places far away in time and space.
For me, libraries are more of exactly that, a place to be like quiet and study.
The gym leader and trainers of this gym often go out to Iron Island. They not only train their Pokemon there, but work out as well.
That's cool. I don't remember anything about Iron Island at all. I'm assuming there are going to be some Steel-type Pokemon there, though. What is your house about? Taylor Eldritch's house. Wait, this guy's name is Eldritch? Oh, Kiwi, I think we found a friend for you. If there's one thing you like more than libraries, it's tentacles after all in Cthulhu.
Our boy has too much energy. I wish he'd be a little quieter. I'm going to be a sailor just like my dad. He's a real man among men. He's a real man among men.
I can't say this in this voice, apparently.
He's a real man among men. Even the sea doesn't scare him. Oh, but a gym leader'd be cool too. Byron's so awesome.
All right, then. If you say so, little kid.
My brilliant instinct tells me there's a secret path somewhere in this city, and there is treasure beyond that path.
Thanks for that little heads up. I think I see the secret path, which means it must connect southward. I can probably surf over there, actually.
Do you want to set sail?
No, I don't. So, alright. I think what we're going to do is, most importantly, Gengar is still my favorite Pokemon. Even with being nerfed and losing Levitate, Gengar will always be my favorite. He may not be on my competitive team if I build one in the future, but I'm not really into competitive Pokemon at this point in my life. I just don't have the time or the knowledge base, frankly. Like, I keep up with some modern-day competitive scene, but not nearly enough of it. But I think with all it said, Kiwi, let's go ahead and end the episode here, and in the next one, we'll take on the gym. With all that said, I hope you've enjoyed watching, and if you're awake, I hope this is helping you fall asleep. If you're asleep, I hope you're sleeping well. I love you, and I will see you in the next one.